Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we are going to discuss this great book, The Midlife Cyclist by Phil Cavell. I got the book after someone put a comment in one of my early videos. I couldn't find the original comment of the person that actually suggested me, but I want to thank him or her, I can't remember, for the suggestion, because this has really been a very great read for me. First of all, I had to accept that I'm a midlife cyclist. I started reading the small fonts and then, I'm definitely a midlife cyclist myself, so there's no denying about that, and I thoroughly enjoyed the book. The author is an expert in bike fit, is the pioneer of Cycle Fit organization, so is one of the greatest specialists in this field. Not only that, in the book there are multiple contributions from physicians, doctors, heart specialists, so it is a book written with a degree of precision and information that is really unparalleled. The book focuses on a new generation of cyclists in a way, not because before we didn't have cyclists that were going to ride the bike in the 40, 50 or 60 or even more, but today that kind of age group not only wants to ride their bike, they want to ride the bike at the best of the performance, they want to race, and they want to almost keep increasing the results that we're getting, structured training, nutrition, everything is geared to the maximum performance. So the book analyzes also the possible risks of health-related factors that training at that kind of level could bring, of course. I want to focus especially on a few key points that really interested me, but I'm also one main element that found me very perplexed, and it's regarding the pedal stroke technique. I'm struggling to understand what Phil Cavell wants to say in this particular instance, and it's definitely not what I have been experiencing on my own development on the bike. I really would like you to help me on that, because I will express what my concerns are regarding the pedal technique that is described here and what I feel on the bike that's the most efficient pedal technique for me. If you would like to comment and share your experience in this respect, I'll be extremely grateful. So the book is extremely detailed in Will I Die? Checking whether the extreme approach could be still beneficial or might pose some risks. We all know that sport, movement is definitely beneficial. We don't need to explain that. There's plenty of evidence everywhere. But there's an argument whether too much of any activities, especially growing old, could be detrimental to your health and your result. With the most famous case is the inventor of jogging that unfortunately died of heart attack. And this is the argument that most detractors of extreme sport always point out, where there could be a risk in exerting so much, so long, and in old age. But the book leaves a lot of hope, with some risks that have to be considered, that we could grow old and point for performance, and there are a lot of examples in terms of heart-related issue and some key elements on what to look for when you hear some trigger bells that could lead to potential damage. It's a fantastic resource, and that section, yes, is a bit grim. Will I die? I believe the answer, not for now, is the answer, touch wood, and something else if you are Italian, and is extremely detailed and pleasurable. One main element that found me in sympathy with the book is the fact that, without doubt, the book suggests resistance training to be associated with cycling. I am of a slightly different extraction. I started cycling recently, about not even 2 years ago, coming from all other sports. I've been doing sparring in boxing and kickboxing and rock climbing. These were my two main sports before the lockdown. When the lockdown happened, I started cycling, and it was a very nice progression for me. But I've always been using weights at the gym. Again, boxing and rock climbing, they are not endurance sport, but they are all based on some sort of strength training, explosive power. And finding that a book like that focuses on also strength training, thinking that especially growing old is necessary for maintaining the muscular, avoid sarcopenia, which is lowering of the muscle of the body, and also look after the bone density. I was really pleased when I read that, and for me, strength training should be almost mandatory in our way of life, because our body are designed to endure the stress related from weights, strength training, resistance training, however you want to call it. But the main point that I would love to touch is on the pedal stroke technique. This is because it's an element coming from the author. There's a bike fit expert, well, one of the biggest experts in bike fit, found me a bit perplexed. The author focuses on the downstroke mainly to avoid any cyclist to actually use the upstroke. Anyway, and he compares the upstroke to the circular pedal stroke that I love. I'm not sure if they are the same thing, and the author compares the uplift of the second part of the stroke to a running movement. And this is where I tend to deviate what the author is saying, because the author is comparing the movement of running and comparing the uplift of the pedal stroke when you are running and your leg is in the air going forward again to touch the ground. So the key here for the author is avoid the uplift to avoid engaging the hip muscles, which for the author they're not designed to lift heavy weights, but only designed to move the leg forward in mid-air, so not with a lot of strength attached to those hip flexors. Okay, so the author compares the two techniques that at that time were going to clash. Is the old school that also Greg LeMond was implementing, is the one where he was teaching a circular movement, which is something I have to say I do myself on the bike, comparing to the new style technique that was focusing on the downstroke only. There's like a pedal masher that cyclists like Armstrong and Froome and so many others implemented. The author saying that the hip flexors here are not designed to lift weight in this, which I agree, because they are designed to recoil the leg forward. See, these are the hip muscles that propel the leg forward to be able to touch the ground again and move you forward. What I'm saying here is that if you do want to have a circular movement, you're not actually using this hip flexor to pull up. The element I'm struggling more with is identifying the upstroke, because to me it doesn't happen with the hip flexors, but to have a circular movement of the pedal stroke, you use quads in the first part of the downstroke, which is very important. At the same time, towards the bottom of the downstroke, you engage your hamstring in this movement that goes from this section, moving towards this section here. You haven't had an upstroke But definitely the movement shifted from the downstroke to this sort of movement. If you actually engage your foot on the ground, you feel that once you reach this point, to actually move the foot backwards, this muscle straight away has to be engaged. And if you want to propel forward, see how hard it becomes. Then you can forget about this. You're only using the hip flexors to gently move your leg up and start again. I agree that from this point upwards, there shouldn't be pulling up, because in this moment, definitely your hip flexors, they are not your strongest muscle. So from this onwards is the other side that pushes hard. And from here, you start again, strong push with the quads, hamstring, hamstring, and off you go. You have had a control on the pedal all the way through. Focusing only on the downstroke carries the problem of positioning sometimes the saddle too high. Because if I only focus on the downstroke, eventually a lot of riders put the saddle too high to feel the relief of the quads when the leg reaches full extension. Because they say, okay, I don't need to pull up, the pushing down is the most important, they lift the saddle too high up until you can see a lot of people cycling on the tiptoes, where they concentrate on the downstroke, the leg goes too straight, there's no power anymore from here in the hamstring enough to do the second part of the movement, you lose a lot of power and you need to start again doing this meshing movement, which I have to say, if you are too high, decreases your power immensely, and I tested on my own body. To me, having a circular movement doesn't mean that you have to lift with your hip flexor, but it means that you have the control of the power on the pedal going down, from here going backwards using the hamstring, and up to this point where the hamstrings are engaged, and you release and go for the next stroke. So this kind of circular movement is only achievable when you have the correct saddle height and you have pressure throughout the pedal stroke. This has worked for me. I check my performance on the segments. I do ride every day, all year round, commuting, and checking the saddle height together with the performance on the Strava segment I know very well. I could feel that for me, the circular movement with a constant engaged of power was absolutely the most efficient one. In the book is explained in a different way, maybe to avoid problems to the hip flexors. Maybe I haven't interpreted in the best possible way what Phil Cavell was saying, but I would love to hear your comment, because this is an element I'm very, very passionate about. And for me, he has worked. I go on my ride, I have really good power. It reminds me on when I used to run on a track, 100 meters, 200 meters, where you had spikes on your shoes. It's similar to what I experience riding the bike in my current position. I do see other riders, younger, fitter than me on paper. Sometimes I see them too high on the tiptoes, and when we sprint, I know that it's difficult for them to keep going on a good power cycle. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comment. It's a great book anyway. This pedal technique left me with some questions. I would love to hear your feedback. Thanks again. Ciao.